of the saying, all publicity is good publicity? Well, that depends on who's on your payroll. Like, remember that time that everyone hated Lindsay Lohan because she needed help after being catapulted into fame as an embryo? How dare she, am I right? Welcome to Dumb Down Discussions, a web series where I research topics that confuse me and hope to teach both you and I about them in video format. Because who can read these days? I'm Gabriella, and today I'm going to talk to you about public relations, the business of charisma, scandals, and how good you are at making other people look bad. I'm very aware of how blurry and washed out the photo behind me is, so this is what it is before we start the video. Thank you for listening. Speaking of which, attention, clean up on aisle Army Hammer. No, I'm not letting this one go. That dead horse is getting beaten on this channel. What a PR nightmare. And a regular one at that. I mean, come on. Cannibalism? So 1980s. Jeffrey Dahmer's attorneys called. They're reporting an identity theft. But seriously, why are we all so obsessed with public narratives? Who's that song about? Are they still an item? Why would he do that? How much are they being paid? How big is their house? How did they decorate that house? I love limes. And for the love of all things good, who are we burning at the stake? I have a meeting at 10 and I was promised the second coming of Joan of Arc before I leave. So, chop chop. And before I hear, well, not everyone cares about celebrities. You are a liar. Whether the celebrity is Chris Hemsworth or Cristiano Ronaldo, your favorite lead singer or your favorite self-help novelist, following highly publicized criminal trials, seeing what the besties of Bitcoin are trading. And don't think I've forgotten about the pedestal where the tech nerds have placed that car and spaceman along with his alien girlfriend. This one is for the communists. Politicians, athletes, musicians, actors, large internet personalities, comedians, big shot lawyers, corporations, billionaires, they all have one thing in common. Most of them have a PR team, or a PR person, typing furiously behind the scenes at all hours of the day. Now, what is a PR team? PR, or public relations teams, are basically the people in charge of giving the general public, you and I, a certain opinion, usually positive, of whoever hired them. Their job is to persuade an audience into thinking whatever it is they need to think in order to make their clients, and therefore themselves, successful. And positive is totally different based on the figure. Like, it can be anywhere from making sure we all hear about a pop-up event that Billie Eilish is doing, to burying a story about Mitch McConnell spitting onto a group of crying orphans. I pulled that out of nowhere, and I have no evidence it happened, but not a single person watching this would have been shocked, even in the slightest. I bet all of you were even willing to believe that without the simplest Google search. PR teams work outside the realm of advertisements. It's the difference between seeing a BMW commercial during the Super Bowl and reading a news article about someone getting into a big car accident without any injuries while in a BMW. You know that one was bought, paid for, and perfectly designed to be tempting to the viewer, while the other feels like a more good-natured story, a story that led you to forming your own opinion on the brand. How sweet. And babes, hate to break it to you, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but in the world of PR, no opinion is your own. Good reputations, bad reputations, and neutral reputations in the public eye can usually be chalked up to PR. A narrative is always being weaved, whether we realize it or not. So, how do they weave? Well, publicists have to find a way to make their clients interesting enough to talk about, things that writers want to cover and people want to read about, that are still flattering to their image. They might ask them not to cover a negative story with the agreement that they'll give them dibs on a different story down the line. For example, say a celebrity cheats on another celebrity. Oops, never happened before. Maybe the publicist would ask the newspapers not to cover it and promise that they'll be the first to know when that couple gets engaged. Newspaper? What fucking year do I think it is? Sorry, I meant website. And before I continue with explaining, a little disclaimer for this video. All of this is based on a mix of research plus speculation, because if there's one thing a publicist is going to do, it's cover their tracks. But if any publicists stumble across this video and maybe want to tell me some hot goss, please slide into my DMs. They will be open. I would literally love nothing more. That sounds incredible. To talk about PR, we must first discuss the history of it and why the public obsession is to be expected. The first paid PR firm careers were started in the late 1800s to early 1900s when newspapers, and then people along with them, started to see corporations as distrustful and greedy, filled to the brim with corruption and exploitation of their workers. The Industrial Revolution was less shiny and new, so the rose-colored glasses were off. The companies needed an image rehab. So, as many things in a current society, PR was created to defend corporate interest and promote mass production and consumption. Shocker, huh? One person who's argued to be the father of PR is Edward Bernays, nephew of Sigmund Freud. He described it as a social science, using elements of psychology, sociology, and scientific manipulation to produce a herd-like public. They literally engineered this shit to stick. His big PR claim to fame was marketing Lucky Strike cigarettes to the female demographic. He saw that the girls weren't biting. So his first question, why weren't the girls biting? Turns out it was because the green color scheme was a turnoff. So what did Mr. Edward Bernays do? He persuaded fashion designers, charity organizations, and interior decorators to make green all the rage, so there'd be no more outfit clashing. He also convinced the ladies that cigarettes were torches of freedom and a sign of rebellion against a male-dominated society. It is super feminist to want more women to die from lung cancer, huh? Exploiting the fight for feminism to make sales sounds totally revolutionary and something I'd never expect from corporations. On another note, happy Pride Month from Chick-fil-A! Are you tired yet? 'Cause I am. So, why the fuck do we care about all these narratives to the point where there's an entire career dedicated to keeping them in check? Well, from cavemen drawings to the Bible, all the way to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the girls have gobbled up a good story since the dinosaurs were evicted. And PR is no different. Think about it. There's usually a protagonist, a few side characters, maybe a love interest, depending on the client, and an antagonist. Sometimes, if we're feeling extra spicy, the love interest and the antagonist are the same person. Sometimes there are crossovers between stories that lead to collaborations and more people paying attention. There's a reason why Avengers movies usually do better than the solo films. You got more people paying attention. You got fans of everybody all in the same place. That's So Sweet Life of Hannah Montana style, if you will. And the reason behind this love of a spill sesh isn't just fun chatter with friends. It's got some survival instincts thrown in there too. It's always been important to observe your fellow man and the situations that they find themselves in. Your animal brain is making a call on how trustworthy these people are and what value they bring to your life. Why are they useful to you on this floating rock? If it's a company, why would they get your hard-earned money when so many others are also fighting in the ring to the death for your money? You better work, bitch. Hashtag free Britney. And when it comes to celebrities, it has always paid to pay attention to people at the top. Seeing how the royals live, well, it ain't too shabby. And the natural conclusion your brain makes is, you want to live like them, do what they do. Ever notice how Kardashian friends suspiciously begin dressing exactly like whatever sister they begin hanging out with? Pick-me's are everywhere, existing in the wild. And there's a very fine line when it comes to those at the top, when admiration can quickly morph into resentment. It goes from, I want to live like that, to, why did they get to live like that? And I'd argue that this line is crossed, of course, when our brain decides we no longer like them. We no longer consider them trustworthy. We no longer see them as good. We are unimpressed with their behavior, and it leads us to see them as undeserving of their lifestyle. It goes from, I want that, to I deserve that more than they do. I mean, come on. Society is no stranger to overthrowing a powerful person if they're deemed untrustworthy and bad for public interest. And while most celebrities are far from dictators, they have a significant amount of influence. Speaking of Kardashians, take Khloe for example. She kind of used to be the fan favorite Kardashian because the people thought she seemed like the closest thing that family had to down to earth. She seemed funny. She didn't let everyone take themselves too seriously. She was pretty vulnerable about her self-esteem issues. Fast forward through her public meltdowns, her efforts to take down others' careers, her dishonesty surrounding her body, and her victimization of herself. I mean, really? Complaining about unrealistic beauty standards that you and your family have created. Alex, I'll take irony for 1,000. So why is our brain so into trust when it comes to those at the top? It's not exactly a trying to mirror them thing. We don't know them. Their personalities aren't things that affect us. People we don't know deciding to attend weekend 1 of Coachella isn't something that offers us too much insight when it comes to our own survival. So, why do we care about trusting celebrities? A little thing most of us have probably heard whispers of: parasocial relations. There's a little stalker in all of us, and I suggest you name yours because I think it's fun and a little bit sexy. Parasocial relationships form when your brain feels a connection to someone you don't actually know, even someone who doesn't actually exist. And while it sounds silly, it makes total sense. At every point in history, if you saw a person as much as you see or interact with the media containing these people, it would mean you were very close and your lives were very intertwined. Our brains haven't had enough time with media to be able to fully tell the difference. Logically, we know that this person isn't our friend, but it doesn't change those gut instincts. And these gut feelings have a theorized name: a leaf. It's like a belief, but not actually. Your gut instinct at watching your favorite character make a decision you don't agree with is probably the same type of disappointment that you'd feel watching a friend. If you think about it for more than an initial split second, your mind can logically calm down when it remembers that none of this is real and none of this will affect you. But it doesn't change that feeling of frustration inside of you. That, my friends, is a leaf. I even watched a TED Talk where a professor said she gave an anonymous questionnaire out, and I'm gonna walk you through those questions really quick, if you don't mind. Think of an acquaintance, someone you don't know super well, but have had casual conversations with now and then. You know a little bit about them, but not really a lot. Got 'em? Now imagine that person passed away. On a scale of 1 to 10, be honest with yourself, don't try to seem nicer than you are. How upset would you be? Now imagine, or if you're unlucky like I am, think back to when that character passed away. On a scale of 1 to 10, how upset would you be? Or were you? F's in the chat, boys. And this isn't to make you feel like a bad person. In the results of the questionnaire, it was typical for the women to feel worse about the character, while the men felt around the same amount of grief for both. And remember, the same amount of grief is also insane, considering we are very aware that one of the two isn't real, because your brain has spent more time with one, getting to know them and finding things to love and admire about them that you probably didn't get the chance to discover about that acquaintance. And at this point, with the amount of media and press surrounding celebrities, they may as well be fictional in your mind. You don't know them, you've probably never even seen them in person, they don't have to affect your day-to-day life, and you know a lot about their persona. You formed a one-sided friendship with them. As much as I'm convinced that Dan Levy would love me and we'd get along so well, I don't actually know him. And once again, may I say, F's in the chat. This is what we do in the real world. We've all had someone in a class or at a party that we watched because something about them drew us in. We saw something that put them on our radar and made us come to certain conclusions that maybe they're confident or funny or nice. And we don't know that, but we do have a hunch. And all of this is how they present, which in some twisted way is marketing. In a way, all of us, all of the time, are marketing ourselves to those around us. No one said we were doing it well, but we are certainly doing it. Everything from a political cause and its ability to take off to a new pop star and their ability to take off. One of the earliest and most successful PR campaigns in the United States helped to grow the KKK up to 4 million members in 3 years. So these dialogues can be pretty sinister if not looked at with a critical eye. A change of narrative that can help the oppressive side seem far more sympathetic and understandable. War propaganda has historically and continues to lead to some pretty bad global decisions of support or lack of support. COVID even. If you look at the US versus the rest of the West, you can see some pretty big differences in how it was marketed. Most everywhere else showed government alarm, and it felt like something crucial and terrifying without question. Look at the US. You see downplaying and arguing, leading the public's reaction to be something they feel able to argue their way out of. It was seen as up for debate, a gross overreaction. And, as I'm sure some of the boomers in your life have told you, first impressions are important. They can make or break how much people will care about your issue, your war, and your pop star. I'm going to compare this to a study done by anthropologists in Canada. And if you're like me and don't know what anthropologists do, they basically study human societies, past, present, and future, and how the aspects of the society affect the people. A lot of societies in that sentence. What is this, a summary of 2019's Joker? The boys are not gonna like that one, and I am not sorry. In this study, a group of researchers set out to find the best treatment plan for addiction that doesn't necessarily surround punishment, instead focusing on rehabilitation. Doesn't sound so bad, but the public wasn't into it, meaning they couldn't get the support or the funding to put it into action. They reached out to these anthropologists and were like, hey, you guys, we need your help. Our province didn't pass the vibe check. How do we get them on board so we can start helping the addicts? They surveyed thousands of people and presented them with one of That's not three. It's called Dumb Down Discussions for a reason. One of 3 reasons as to why this is an important cause, and took note of how this reason affected the support of the person they were talking to. First one, interdependence. Kind of like, we're all connected. What helps one of us will inevitably help all of us and influence everyone in a positive way. We will all benefit from this. This got the people stoked and ready to support. Wait, hold on. I get something out of this? Sick. Where do I sign? Second, ingenuity. This would sound like, we are a province of problem solvers and innovators, pushing the world toward a new frontier. We have never met a problem we couldn't conquer. Basically, we're the shit and super smart, and if anyone was gonna do it, it was gonna be us. This also got people to support. Not as much as the first one, but still effective. Yeah, we are pretty smart. And it's not surprising that we'd be the first to figure this out. So let's fucking go. Last one, empathy. Along the lines of, people with addictions are still people, worthy of treatment. This could be your mother, your brother, your best friend. And as individuals, we need to show these people compassion and healing. This one lessened their support. Hold on, dude, I'm like, it's just not clicking. Literally, what's in it for me? You know, like, I just can't see why I care. Like, I'm not being complimented or benefited, so pass for me. I am trying so hard not to be horrified by the selfishness of human nature. All that to say, framing matters, whether it's related to rehabilitating addictions or Olivia Rodrigo releasing driver's license. Joshua Bassett did not have a fighting chance of coming back from that. The match was lit, the people were gathered around the stake. Did you want us to reschedule the burning? Because I'm sorry, that is not happening after we all heard good for you, right? I mean, it's just not feasible. On the topic of Olivia Rodrigo and Joshua Bassett, High School Musical The Show's PR team should be getting a raise. I mean, come on. Catapulted both of them into the limelight, her album releasing and smashing records, her Taylor Swift songwriting collab at the tail end of Taylor re-releasing Fearless and bringing us all back to the middle school era of shamelessly screaming songs at the top of our lungs in the car. Everyone involved in this beef having a song ready at every turn in rebuttal. All just in time for season 2 of High School Musical, The Show, to drop. The way that Disney publicists perfectly released every sequence at the exact right time. I mean, sometimes life imitates art, but sometimes life just is art. You know what I'm saying? And of course, this is the part where we speculate, because some people will want to grab the pitchforks when it comes to what I'm about to insinuate. Joshua Bassett and Olivia Rodrigo's publicity craze isn't the only HSM romance we should be questioning the PR motives of. Is Vanessa ringing any bells, people? Okay, put the torches down and hear me out. They start dating just around the time the first High School Musical movie comes out. Continue to date through the sequels, ride the high of attending high-ticket award shows together, going on very private NBA courtside dates, staying together through Zach's breakout role in 17 again, continue riding the high of Oscars parties that other HSM non-couples were coincidentally not invited to, movie premieres, and also helping to give him a fresh image as opposed to the usual playboy who goes on capitalizing on his newfound fame. He even goes on to point out that everyone is just always telling him that he could be playing the field, but it's just not in his heart, you know? While also saying that he knows that the tabloids would tear him to bits if he ever tried to. And when Zach was asked about it being a PR relationship, he said he thought that was insane and that he had no idea that people really even did that. And not to call bullshit or anything, but even I knew that people did that by the age of 12 from reading 17 magazine. So how did a grown man in the industry not know that people did that? Thou dost protest too much, methinks. And from what I could find, not only do celebrities do that, they kind of do it a lot. Certain celebrities even get married with a clause in their prenup that state a specific length of time that the couple must be married in order for both parties to get the assets that they agreed on in the prenup. Sounds to me like they're contractually obliged to give each other clout for a certain amount of time. And if anyone could pull it off, it would be the professional pretenders of the world, no? But you know what they say. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you don't want to believe me, here. Take a look at these pictures of Nicole Kidman skipping out of her attorney's office once her divorce from Tom Cruise was finalized. Are you convinced? Because I would say that the pure glee on her face, if that doesn't sway you, nothing will. And you know, maybe sometimes it becomes more. Have we not all dabbled in Wattpad? Fake relationship becomes real, a bit of Stockholm Syndrome happening, and your brain makes the best out of a shitty situation? Sure. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it did all start on an age-old trick. Oh no, they have to share one bed. What are they gonna do? The show's scandal is based off of a real-life publicist who worked with George H.W. Bush during his presidency and went on to become a pretty prolific crisis manager to Monica Lewinsky, Wesley Snipes, Michael Vick, Walmart, United Healthcare, Sony, and more. And I would go out on a limb and say that crisis managers usually don't have the same viewpoint of all publicity is good publicity. I mean, when you look at the people that I just mentioned, each of those situations were life-ruining. Monica Lewinsky being taken advantage of by the President of the United States, Wesley Snipes sent to prison by the IRS, Michael Vick pleading guilty to involvement in a dogfighting ring. Sure, they all got people talking, but not in a helpful way to their careers, their reputations, or their livelihoods. Things like that need help minimizing and reframing. But there is a different side of the coin when it comes to bad publicity. I'm sorry to mention them so much in this video, but we all know in the world of PR, the Kardashians are fucking everywhere. Remember when Kim Kardashian released the name of her body contouring brand that would be rivaling Spanx and called it Kimono? This, of course, caused heavy pushback due to her profiting off of and attempting to trademark the name kimono, which is obviously a traditional piece of Japanese clothing that she was using to describe expensive tube tops. Nothing about this was minimized. It was everywhere. That name was put through the ringer on Twitter. She put out an apology and then changed the name to Skims, which is also another play on her name, has no ring of controversy to it, and is a bit close to the name of Spanx, which would help to give the public a general gist of what the company was even for. So this was clearly in the drafts already, calling into question why the fuck didn't she come out with that name in the first place? In her apology, she said something along the lines of,
"Looking back, it seems foolish that we would put this name out thinking it wouldn't be offensive."
And like, you hit the nail on the head there, Kim. What were you thinking? It does seem ridiculous that with a staff of marketers, publicists, and employees out the wazoo, no one considered backlash from one of the most controversial families in the world? No, not true at all, Kim. This is absolutely a lie. The kimono branding may have been quote-unquote a disaster, But it did cause waves that led to her first Skims collection pretty much selling out. Plus, she got to look like the good guy. See, she changed the name out of the goodness of her heart and is not going to profit off of traditional Japanese culture. Well, she kind of is, because that's like the whole reason people found out about it, but still, that was so nice of her to do that. She's such an ally to the Japanese, clearly. That's why she tried to trademark kimono. This, my friends, is called outrage marketing. Remember when I said positive is subjective? Sometimes positive means drop a bomb right before merch release, so we have all eyes on us as we attempt to make money. On a completely separate topic, has anyone tried Kendall Jenner's authentic Mexican tequila? I'm such a bitch. The absolute clownery of this family, babes. Like, what am I meant to think? Like, come on. You've got some of the best PR teams in the world. You didn't think that that might be a little bit offensive, my love. And this family isn't the first. Most major fashion designers have pulled this shit to a shocking degree for a while. I mean, come on. It's tried and true method. Give a bunch of white models traditionally and historically black hairstyles while putting them in clothing that you want the public to see. People rage about it on Twitter, they write articles about it, and they get all sorts of free promo. Kinda like that BMW article. You get to drop a collection without even needing to pay for a singular ad for it. You let the machine oil itself. Plus, you have all of the free speech warriors angry with people for being upset, who may even go on to buy it out of spite for this demonic cancel culture we're all always hearing about. Speaking of cancel culture, talk about rewriting a narrative. We've reached a stage where cancel culture is so widely defined that people have started to refer to being accused of sexual assault as cancel culture. They're seen as these victims instead of alleged criminals. What's next? We start referring to murder as not passing the vibe check? Come on, people. We all saw all the free speech warriors playing the violin for Armie Hammer, who people are just being so mean to. I mean, all he did is allegedly carve the first initial of his name into a woman's abdomen with a knife, leading his agency, his publicist, and several movies to drop him. This plus his weird obsession with cannibalism and those bizarre videos of him on a bender. Talk about a fall from grace. I can't even watch Man from U.N.C.L.E. anymore without having to think of that. This is about me. This is all about me. In all this research I've done about PR, I can say the biggest trend that I've noticed in the takedown of a celebrity's reputation happens when people figure out that the gig is up. When it becomes so clear that the person's real life personality is nothing like the persona that they have shown you. Besides good-looking, long-time married, seemingly clean-cut Armie Hammer, look at another fall from grace. Daytime royalty Ellen DeGeneres. She preached kindness and laughter, charity and fun. Then people find out she is not kind, her laughter is usually fake, she's not super charitable, and she's basically the opposite of fun. The public felt betrayed, and everything she said is now automatically seen as hypocritical and fake. People look back at old interviews and see tension instead of the fondness they may have seen before. Another big one was Taylor Swift. She was America's sweetheart, pretty universally liked, talked about as a serial dater, but that was just run-of-the-mill misogyny that the media is very big on. Nothing career-ruining. Until the narrative was changed when people saw the released and cut footage from her conversation with Kanye West, making her look two-faced and calculating. Then the full uncut tape was released, showing her innocence, and people could move on. But it definitely left a lasting impact on how the public still treats her. People still call her snaky, and they can't put their finger on it, but they just don't trust her. And I do just have to say that 1989, the album, is pop royalty, and I will take no slander against that album. This isn't to say no criticisms of Taylor Swift are valid. I get it. She's pretty whiny, like pretty much every other white woman in the public eye. This is just more of an observation of the cultural shift and how hard it is to bounce back. I mean, her stand stuck by her side the whole time, but there's a reason for that. Okay, so now on to the stans. Please don't kill me. I'm not going to say anything bad about Jungkook, okay? I know my place. Don't light the cannon, okay? I would never come for Jungkook. When it comes to sticking by the sides of their favorite celebrities, it is psychologically ingrained. I mean, when we trust and like someone, we're willing to put up with and defend a lot, especially if we feel on some level like we owe them something. Maybe BTS albums were there for you and helped you feel better when you were at your worst. And that is a good thing. So it makes sense that you would want to support and defend them. And once again, not coming for the army, trust me. But it also makes sense that if somebody, not me, if somebody had a negative association with BTS, and they say something that isn't necessarily horrible, but isn't great, they would be much more willing to react negatively than if someone who they liked had said that thing. I mean, come on, we've all not liked someone, and everything they do can quickly become nails on a chalkboard. I'm sure there are people who don't like me, and if they watch this video, they'd probably get really annoyed at several of the things I've said, just out of pure irritation. And it works that way for celebrities too. Even them saying a good thing can be deemed as performative or for PR. And that's not to say it's incorrect, but I'm sure that their favorite artist could have done something deemed performative or for PR, but they don't see it that way due to the trust that they have in them. Once again, that trust coming into play. This is why when you break up with someone a lot of the time, you are heavily questioning why you dated them in the first place. We're much less critical of people we like, especially as children, which is why Jake Paul will never fucking go away, no matter how many times we get on our knees and beg. But it doesn't mean we can't stop trying, people. Scold your young family members if they watch the disaster that is Jake Paul. Help them see the light, please. Grow up to be full-size demon boxers, and we as a society cannot take that. You see a kid watching a YouTube mobile with him on the screen, ask to borrow their phone and throw it very far away. So, summary of what we've learned. Everything is a narrative, and we can never truly know when something is real. We're all just bags of meat with smaller bags of meat, constantly dictating how we feel about other bags of meat. We pay attention to the supposed elite because at some level we want something that they have, and Homo sapiens have always loved some hot goss. So watch your reality shows, stan BTS, but remember to remain curious about how narratives are trying to sway you. Ask yourself questions. Who is saying this, and how do they get to benefit from me believing it? And once again, just to depress you a little bit, empathy is a lost art form. So instead of explaining climate change in an empathetic way, start telling these fucking idiots that it's been proven that negative air quality can shrink your dick size. It will affect you, and soon, okay? Or that it's so barbaric of us to continue exploiting the planet. And if we keep this up, when the aliens show up, they're gonna rock our shit if we don't get to updating it, okay? Soon enough, we're gonna be doing an intergalactic Olympics, and imagine if we're the only ones without sick planet-safe gadgets. They're gonna cream us and then never invite us back because of our pollution-causing equipment. And you can rest assured, it will be embarrassing. Anyways, that wraps that up. So thank you so much for spending a chunk of your day with me. And if you enjoyed that chunk, maybe give it a like and subscribe. Comment down below any ideas you have for topics that you'd like me to explain, or just to say hi. I'm definitely going to do one about the stock market at some point, but Jesus Christ, does that terrify me. Good God. But that's for future me to worry about, okay? And as usual, the bell doesn't dismiss you. I do. So class dismissed.